Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by green hills and a flowing river, there were two sisters named Zola and Lindiwe. They were different in many ways, but their bond was strong. Zola, the older sister, had dropped out of school, and at the age of 25 married a man named Chiad, who was 20 years older than her. Lindiwe, the younger sister, was educated and worked as a manager in a big city company. She was admired by everyone. The two sisters didn't have a close relationship. Zola often felt like Lindiwe's life was much better than hers. There was a coldness between them that neither could overcome. Lindiwe, on the other hand, loved her sister but couldn't understand why Zola was so distant. One afternoon, Lindiwe returned to the village to visit their parents. As soon as she arrived, Zola was sitting by the door. Lindiwe excitedly shared her good news. "I'm getting married," she said. Their parents smiled, filled with happiness, and congratulated her, but then Lindiwe added quietly, "And I'm also pregnant." The room went silent. Zola's heart twisted. What had been a moment of happiness turned cold and tense. Their father spoke up, his voice serious. "Bring the man you've chosen to marry," he said. Zola stood up suddenly, her face angry. "Is this what you've come to, Lindiwe? Are you going to rub it in my face?" Zola shouted. "I knew it. You think this is funny, don't you? You got pregnant just to remind me that I have no children?" Lindiwe stared at her sister, shocked and hurt. "Zola," she whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I came to share my happiness, not to bring you pain." But Zola's anger didn't stop. "You've always had everything. Education, a good job, and now a family. What do I have?" Zola's voice trembled with emotion. Tears filled Lindiwe's eyes, but she stayed calm. "Zola, I don't want to compete with you. I never have. I just wanted to share my happiness with you." Zola turned away, her heart heavy with jealousy and pain. Lindiwe left the house feeling crushed, wondering why her sister hated her so much. Days passed, and the family tried to bring peace. They arranged a meeting, but Zola refused to come. Lindiwe decided to go to Zola's home to talk. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Lindiwe sat outside and began singing a song they used to sing together when they were children. She hoped the song would bring back warm memories. She sang softly, hoping Zola would hear. After a long time, Zola came to the door, angry. She grabbed a bucket of water and threw it at Lindiwe. "Don't come near my house again," Zola yelled, slamming the door in her sister's face. Lindiwe stood there, soaking wet, her heart breaking. The neighbors watched from their windows, confused by the anger between the sisters. It seemed that Zola had built a wall around herself, shutting everyone out. The weeks that followed were difficult. Lindiwe tried calling, but Zola didn't answer. She sent messages, but they were ignored. Lindiwe didn't know what else to do. She decided to visit again, this time bringing her wedding invitation, hoping Zola would come. She knocked on the door again, but there was no response. With a heavy heart, Lindiwe slid the invitation and a note under the door, apologizing for any hurt she may have caused, but Zola didn't respond. The silence between them remained. The day of Lindiwe's wedding arrived. She looked beautiful in her wedding dress, but there was sadness in her eyes. She left a seat for Zola in the front row, hoping her sister would come, but Zola never showed. Zola stayed at home watching TV as if nothing had happened. In her heart, the bitterness was like poison. She had lost so much in her life. Her dreams, her happiness, even the hope of becoming a mother. Her in-laws never stopped reminding her of what she lacked. They mocked her for being childless, treating her like she didn't belong. Zola's jealousy and pain had built a prison in her heart, and Lindiwe's happiness only made Zola feel worse about everything she had lost. A few weeks later, Lindiwe was in the hospital ready to give birth. She sent a message to Zola saying, "I'm naming my baby after you, Zola." Zola looked at the message, angry at first. "How dare she?" she muttered. But then her mother called with terrible news. Lindiwe had passed away. She had left this world, leaving behind her newborn daughter and husband. Zola's world collapsed. All the anger and bitterness that had filled her heart turned into deep sorrow. She hurried to the hospital, where her family was crying. Her mother's voice trembled as she said, "Lindy, we loved you so much. Even in her last moments, she asked for you." Zola froze, her heart breaking. She entered the hospital room and saw her sister lying there, peaceful but gone. And next to her, the baby named after Zola. Zola picked up the baby and held her close, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't see it. I didn't realize how much you loved me. Now it's too late." Her mother, standing silently, apologized for all the hurt in their family. Zola stood there, broken, realizing her mistakes. She had spent so long blaming her sister for everything that had gone wrong, but now she understood it had always been love that she had been rejecting. As she held the baby in her arms, Zola knew that her sister's love had never left her. Even at the end, Zola carried the weight of her past. The guilt from her mistakes and the emptiness in her life haunted her every day. Every time she saw her younger sister Lindiwe smile, Zola was reminded of the life she could have had, the love, the joy, and the freedom to make her own choices. She saw Lindiwe as the golden child, the one who escaped their parents' strict control and lived the life of her dreams. In Zola's eyes, it wasn't fair. Lindiwe's success, her happiness, and even her pregnancy felt like a reminder of everything Zola had lost. Zola blamed Lindiwe for all the pain she felt, even though Lindiwe had always loved her unconditionally. Zola had let her anger and sadness spill onto her sister, and now, standing over Lindiwe's lifeless body, Zola finally understood the weight of her actions. She realized that it was time to let go of the anger. The damage was already done. Zola apologized to Lindiwe's husband, confessing everything: the abortion, the rejection of Kwame, her first marriage to Chiad, and all the pain that made her bitter. Lindiwe's husband listened quietly, his eyes softening. "Zola," he said gently, "I forgive you. Lindiwe loved you deeply. She would want you to find peace." For the first time in years, Zola felt relief from his forgiveness. She focused on taking care of her niece, Zola. And in those quiet moments holding the baby in her arms, Zola felt love again. Real, pure love. But life wasn't finished with Zola yet. Her husband, Chiad, tired of her, married a younger woman chosen by his family. One afternoon, Zola came home to find her things, packed in bags on the doorstep. "You're no longer welcome here," Chiad said coldly. His new wife stood in the background. Chiad's family had made sure that all the legal papers were in his favor. Zola had no claim to anything, not the house, not the money, and certainly not his loyalty. Broken and humiliated, Zola returned to her parents' house with only a small bag of clothes. Her mother greeted her quietly, guilt on her face, while her father wouldn't even look at her. Days passed, and Zola's failures weighed heavily on her. To escape her thoughts, she decided to visit her niece, hoping the baby's smile would bring her some peace. When Zola arrived at Lindiwe's husband's house, she knocked nervously, holding a small teddy bear. The door opened, and there stood a tall man with a warm presence. "Zola?" he asked, surprised. Zola froze. "Kwame," she whispered. It was him, her Kwame. His hair was shorter with some gray, but his deep, kind eyes were still the same. "I didn't know you'd be here," Zola said, her voice shaking. Kwame smiled gently. "I came to visit my cousin after returning from abroad. I didn't know he was married to your sister, or that you were the same Zola I once loved." The air between them was thick with years of unspoken pain and regret. "Please come in," Kwame said softly. Inside, little Zola slept peacefully in her crib. Kwame looked at her and smiled. "She looks just like Lindiwe. She's beautiful." Zola felt tears fill her eyes. They sat together, and for the first time in decades, Zola opened up to Kwame. She shared everything: the pain, the guilt, the loneliness, and the bitterness that had consumed her. Kwame listened with compassion. "You've been failed by so many people," Kwame said after a pause, "but it's not too late to change your story." Zola nodded, tears flowing down her face. Kwame, who had focused all his years on his work and had never had time for women, was now a successful doctor. Zola couldn't believe how life had treated him. In the following weeks, Kwame and Zola began to rebuild their connection. He visited often, spending time with little Zola and talking to Zola. Slowly, the walls Zola had built around her heart started to fall. For the first time in years, she felt understood. Kwame was gentle, patient, and kind, never rushing Zola to confront her painful feelings. His presence brought a calmness to her chaotic world. One evening, while they sat on the couch, Kwame asked, "Do you remember when we used to sit under the mango tree by your house, talking about our dreams?" Zola smiled faintly, her thoughts drifting. "Yes, you always said you wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to be a lawyer." Kwame looked at her seriously. "You deserve happiness, Zola. You've carried this pain long enough, and it's time to let it go. We can't change the past, but we can choose what happens from here." Zola looked at him, tears in her eyes. "Kwame, I don't know if I can. I've made so many mistakes. I'm so broken." Kwame gently took her hand. "We're all broken in some way, Zola, but sometimes it's the cracks that let the light in." As the months went by, Zola slowly allowed herself to heal. She focused on caring for little Zola, giving her all the love in her heart. Kwame was always there, supporting her and encouraging her. One evening, Kwame invited Zola to his home. He had prepared a nice dinner for them. Zola was happy, and they ate together, laughing at old memories. Afterward, Kwame handed her a small box. "Zola," he said softly, "I've loved you since we were young. Despite everything, that love never died. I know we can't erase the past, but we can build a new future together. Will you let me love you? Will you let me stand by you as you heal?" Zola's hands shook as she opened the box and saw a ring. Her heart raced, and for the first time in years, she felt warmth and hope. "Yes, Kwame," she whispered through her tears. Kwame laughed in joy, and together they began to build their life slowly. They didn't rush into marriage, but focused on healing and making new memories. Zola also started to heal her relationship with her parents. Her mother, full of guilt, worked hard to make things right, while her father, though slower to show regret, began to act with kindness. Chiad, on the other hand, found himself in financial trouble. His new wife wasted his money and ran off with another man. Karma had caught up with him, but Zola no longer carried any anger in her heart. She had found peace in the love she shared with Kwame. Months later, Zola discovered she was pregnant. Kwame had helped her with fertility treatments, and now she was expecting their child. Zola was filled with joy, her hands trembling as she held the pregnancy test. Kwame hugged her tightly, and they both cried with happiness. "This child is our blessing," Kwame said softly. "A fresh start. A sign that love can heal even the deepest wounds." The months that followed were filled with joy. Zola gave birth to twins, and the pain of her past finally ended. Zola lived the rest of her life in happiness, surrounded by the love of her husband and children. Her parents learned a hard lesson: never to sacrifice their children's happiness for the sake of societal approval. Zola's life had been shaped by their decisions, driven by societal pressure and the fear of shame. Their insistence on abortion and rejecting the man she loved had caused years of suffering. This story teaches us that parental decisions driven by fear and shame can hurt their children. It shows that children should be allowed to make their own choices based on love and happiness, not societal expectations. Bitterness and unresolved pain can destroy relationships, but forgiveness, love, and self-reflection can help us heal and break free from cycles of pain. The story also reminds us that it's never too late for redemption, healing, and second chances. Love, whether romantic or familial, can heal even the most broken hearts. True happiness comes from embracing love, letting go of the past, and building a future free from old wounds.